Welcome to Vital MTB's 2024 SL e-bike test sessions. In this video, we will discuss the performance of Trek's Fuel EXe. To read the full review, head to vitalmtb.com.
Yeah, over this after? Yeah. Oh, we're going to do a third outing? Okay.
Trek's Fuel EXe is part of the SL e-bike club that strives to strike the lowest bottom line when it comes to weight by utilizing a smaller battery and motor. Like Specialized's Levo SL or Orbea's Rise, the Fuel EXe aims to give riders enough juice to get up climbs with moderate input, matched with a riding experience that mirrors a regular mountain bike ride. And it manages to achieve this in a frame design that nearly hides the fact it's an e-bike. The Fuel EXe is designed off of Trek's Fuel EXe, their ride-everything trail bike. The EXe shares many aesthetic and design similarities with the non-assisted Fuel and features only slightly more reserved geometry. The head angle is a tad steeper, sitting at 64.8 degrees. The chainstay length is 5 millimeters shorter, coming in at 440 millimeters, and reach numbers are spacious across all sizes. Both bikes also feature a Mino Link geo adjustment in the seat stay that adjusts the bottom bracket and head tube angle, but the EXe lacks the leverage rate adjustment found on the regular Fuel. Travel amounts are the same between both bikes, with 140 millimeters of rear wheel travel and 150 millimeter fork. And of course, Trek's now iconic active braking pivot suspension design is employed to separate braking and suspension forces. At the heart of the Fuel EXe is TQ's HRP50 motor. Definitely a less prominent E system in the SL space, it provides 50 Nm of torque with 300 watts of power. A silent operator that takes up minimal space and only weighs 4 pounds, it's combined with a sleek 360 watt-hour battery. This ties the Fuel EXe for last place when it comes to motor torque with Specialized's Levo SL and second to last place in battery size just ahead of the Levo's 320 watt-hour battery. However, unlike the Levo SL, the battery is removable without dropping the motor. All you have to do is remove 2 screws and slide the battery out of an opening in the down tube. So, like Transition's Relay, you could theoretically remove the battery and ride the Fuel EXe as a regular mountain bike. The TQ system features one of the cleanest integrated top tube displays that offers 4 preset screens to display assist level, range, speed, rider and motor watts, and battery level in a percent. A wired assist remote neatly tucks between other controls, and Trek's app gives you access to individual mode tuning, the ability to log rides, and recommended suspension settings based on your build. Trek offers a ton of EXe builds in both aluminum and carbon, ranging from $5,500 to $14,000. Sizes range from small to extra large, and all builds come with the same motor, battery, and 29-inch wheels. We tested the 9.8 GX Axis build that retails for $10,000, and our size extra large test bike weighed 43.12 pounds. This made the Fuel EXe the third lightest and second most expensive bike in the test. Build highlights include a RockShox Lyric Select Plus fork with a Super Deluxe Select Plus shock, SRAM Code bronze brakes, a SRAM GX transmission drivetrain, Bontrager Line Elite 30 carbon wheels, and a Bontrager one-piece carbon handlebar. With a broader range of abilities than some of the other bikes in the test, the Fuel EXe stood out as the go-to SL trail bike when we set out on day one. However, upon learning that it wasn't the lightest bike, in fact it was 1.5 pounds heavier than the lightest bike, the Levo SL, we took another look at where and how the Fuel EXe fits into the SL equation. All right, moving on. We have Trek's Fuel EXe, which I think we'd all agree sits next to Specialized's Levo SL, just when it comes to describing kind of what this SL e-bike category is. But surprisingly, the build we tested wasn't the lightest, and its abilities were more broad than maybe some of the bikes we tested. Let's start with E, component performance again. Only bike with the TQ motor.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe how did it compare to Fazoo's Ride 60 and Specialized's motors?
I feel like it was easily the most natural feeling motor. The transition from like motor to kind of your own effort is pretty seamless.
Quiet.
Dead
Sleek.
silent.
I mean, it's
svelte.
Yes. All the words that mean you can't really tell it's an e-bike. Yeah.
Nimble.
Yeah, it's all of those. I mean, I hopped in the app when we first got the bike, and interestingly enough, their most powerful mode is not turned up all the way, which is kind of a weird one. But once we had the settings kind of in their, thirds, they have 3 modes, so you're kind of getting that broad range of usability. Totally agree. Like, this is one of those systems that's just in the background, and you ride your bike like you would a mountain bike, but the power is always there, and it's quiet. So,
Yeah. It's a great philosophy for like an SLE bike.
yeah, and I think that it's one of the better systems out there too, just from the top tube screen display is, I think it's my favorite. It's just so clean and simple.
Yep.
Their assist switch maybe isn't my favorite because it still is tough to kind of push the buttons, but at least you have buttons. It's clean. It's really neat. Like, there's not really a lot of, if we talk about Fazoo's Ride 60 system that we've talked about having a little bit of room for improvement, this is refinement kind of at its peak.
Yeah, I mean, maybe the only thing I'm looking at over there is the wire to the controller could just be like attached to the dropper post line a little sleeker, like everything was.
It could be wireless. I mean, that exists nowadays with other systems, and that would push this further into that. Kind of just looks like a mountain bike.
Yep.
True. Yeah, no, you can tell they did, like, they put the time and effort into what they created. And it's super, it's super natural feeling, really quiet. When I went down, like when I even turned the motor completely off and pedaled it, it felt like one of the only bikes that I wouldn't hate life had the battery died.
Yeah.
And in my experience of the battery dying, I would agree.
You tested that.
I would agree. Yeah, it wasn't. I think it was pretty abrupt. So where the Bafang went into limp mode at 20%, this did it at 10, and I almost didn't realize it had done it. I mean, it seemed like it shut off, but it's still very in the background, unfortunately, in like a limp mode. Like it becomes like in the background if you think it's off. But it's nice that it's not completely off, and it does try to stretch it as far as it can, but it died on like the steepest climb we did, where you're, experiencing the Bafang. It went into limp mode. But even having it die on that in kind of the worst possible scenario, the access shifting that's hardwired to the bike still worked. And in the easiest gear, it was, still a steep hill, but like it just felt like a steep hill. It didn't feel like a steep hill with a 20-pound pack on or something.
Yeah,
I'd be curious to see how the battery performance does in an area where you're maybe not pedaling up and doing laps, and you're more doing like a big cross-country loop with ups and downs, maybe a little bit I'd maybe like what you said, some of those punchier, steep stuff, like burnt motor goes into a higher torque, that starts to suck power down faster. There's the ideal world for this maybe is not the trails that we were riding. But that being said, like, motor battery interface combo, the fact that makes it an e-bike was really nicely implemented.
Yeah. I think the only kind of knock for me is that I thought Fazoo's system had more power, and that's one of the more popular systems out there right now. It does have 10 newton meters more power, so it should feel like that, but it was enough to be like, okay, like this TQ system is a couple of years old now. I feel like the next evolution's probably coming. Same goes with battery size. Like, this has a 360 watt hour battery compared to the 430 in all the Fazua bikes, and that kind of showed looking at our battery used on our test loop. Like, this was more in that mid 20s range of percent used for the lap versus all of Fazua bikes were like 15%. So you're going to get less range out of this bike. It feels like a little bit less power to me. So kind of overall, it's a bit weaker e-bike package. But at the same time, shifting that towards just kind of what this bike is, like, it's way more of a trail bike to me. And that has its benefits in climbing and descending, depending on what you apply it to. But it like the whole like small lightweight package fits what the bike's kind of intended use is really well.
Yeah, and I think those batteries with kind of like better cell technology will be
Yeah.
kind of the solution to where you can
Yeah.
maybe fit a 430 watt hour battery in it. That would just round that out
Yeah.
to be pretty much perfect, I think.
Yeah, like this bike isn't dated by any means,
Mm-hmm.
but it has quite a few of the bikes we tested here have come out after it launched.
It's on the cusp of like that stuff happening.
Yeah.
But for when it came out, way ahead and still very ahead of, I think, Fuzua in terms of the integration and the user interface.
Yep.
It's about as good as it gets.
Yeah.
And yeah, I mean, you got the Trek dealers. If you have any issues, I mean, I haven't owned a Trek in years, but like I know that they have pretty deep relationships with their dealers, and like most likely any issues that would come up would hopefully be addressed pretty quickly by them.
Yep.
So yeah, like on that front, I feel like my money is like safer.
Yeah, it's a safe
It's a
purchase.
safer investment
Totally.
because you're buying a new piece of technology, and we all know how technology likes to have issues down the road, especially on something that's like outside, seeing rain and dirt and water and all those things. So,
and having worked at a Trek dealer and seen the issues they've had, like it seems like they've addressed a lot of those just in the like frame construction and stuff. It seems a lot more robust and a lot more, like you said, of a safe investment aside from just the motor technology. Like it seems like you'll have to visit the dealer less as well.
What do you guys think about like the value of this bike? It also comes in at 10 grand, like a couple other bikes we tested.
Yeah, GX at 10 grand is, I guess, normal for an e-bike, but they offer so many different build kits, 2 different frame material options like carbon and aluminum.
Yeah, I think it's like
At a lot of
13
different
builds.
levels. Yeah, at a lot of different levels, which is cool. You're like, maybe I don't care about a carbon frame, but I
Yeah.
want to get some nicer parts. That's cool. And if you want, as good as it gets, they have that too. So something for everyone is, something to be said for that.
Yep.
yeah, I would say when you're looking at the prices of the other bikes, I think it has good value. I think it's expensive, but it's refined. They did their homework. I think it looks great. I don't think like you said, it's a trail bike. It had, it might not be like the build that I would purchase, but I think it was a ton of fun. I really liked it. I liked it more than I thought I would. So, and and you're getting a really, really good suspension platform that pedals well, it brakes well.
Let's get into
Like
maybe
on trail.
climbing performance. I think it's more applicable to this bike than maybe any of the other ones because of that trail focused mentality. We would all agree that it's way more forward, like body positioning in general, but especially climbing. Like my headspace riding this bike was more like, I want to go on an adventure because I have a motor that can take me there, and I'm on a bike that has like more broad abilities, where the other bikes were the motor was a means to an end to get to a descent.
Yes. And I think we're very descent focused people.
Yeah.
And so we're putting that in the priority. I don't think this is like a descent focused bike. I think this is like, if you live somewhere, I think this is one of the few bikes that somewhere in the Southwest, a little bit flatter, a little bit rockier. You're not going to have the disadvantages of a heavier bike when you're trying to hop up things or get the back wheel over big ledges. And the power delivery, if you do have to, like when you are hopping it up a ledge, is so smooth that you're not getting that like kind of torque on off feel of like the motor sensing it. If I were to go ride, like South Mountain in Arizona, Utah, some of those places, I think this would almost be the bike I pick first for that stuff.
Yep.
So yeah, it's very specific for a certain person compared to a lot of the other bikes.
Yeah, I think like you said, like we're very descent focused. So we're kind of just like, what's the quickest way to the top, not what's going to round out the ride. I think if your ride has a higher overall speed, not just like higher descent speed, it rewards a higher cadence on both ends, where if you're in the low end of the torque, you're not taking a ton of the battery, like you're not drawing a ton of power. But when you exceed the max speed of the motor, you don't feel it. It just continues, and you can do a longer distance ride more efficiently. And
Yeah.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
think
for
for,
sure.
for climbing performance, it was, maybe not the bike for here, but descending, I feel like it was exactly the type of bike I would ride here. Just, its priorities didn't really match up, I guess, with what we were prioritizing in this instance. And then, but like descending, it was awesome. I was surprised at first. I kind of anticipated just based on like bar height was kind of low and how kind of mellow the power is. I'm like, maybe it's going to be a little like stood up and like hard to ride through the rough stuff. But I thought I did awesome. Cornered really well. Tons of confidence. Like really good bike. But I think, we're descent focused. So I'd probably put taller bars on it.
Yeah, total. I mean, if it's, Trek has their Fuel EXe, and this is the E version of that, and it's like a incredible execution of that goal to me. Like with that bike, the non-e-bike version of the Fuel, you can kind of take anywhere and ride on anything, and it's going to be really enjoyable going up the climbs, going across the hill, and going back down. And this is just a little bit more amplified version of that. Like I totally agree. Going down, maybe when you first kind of look at it or you hop on it, you're like, oh, it's going to be less confidence inspiring and more demanding moments. And I didn't really find it. Like the suspension platform is epic. Like it's so good. You can just like smash stuff. Braking's really good. And I like the fact that you could get this bike and apply it to like a real variety of terrain, which if you're spending a lot of money on e-bike, that is probably something you could look at. Like it's a good angle to look at it as. Like it's a bike you're going to be able to use in a lot of different aspects.
Yeah, absolutely. And it has like a lot of use cases. I think some notes that I kind of had is like, this is a really like perfect tool if you're riding, if you're riding with someone who's fitter than you, but on a regular human powered bicycle, because that motor doesn't feel, one, it's not noisy, you blend in. Two, the power delivery is not so much that you're like gonna drop that person on the regular bike. So there's like almost a place for this in like a partner situation, in like a family situation where like if I want to go ride with my mom or my dad, like something like that, or even just like someone who's kind of traveling around just riding all kinds of different trails or mellower stuff, like
quintessential trail bike.
Exactly.
And it can get pretty aggressive. And I think just to touch on the looks, it's one of the few bikes where like I've seen this next to a Fuel EX and had to really look to notice the difference. And I think that's awesome. I think this is the bike I was most excited to ride actually because of that. I was like, I'm curious how close it is to the normal Fuel EX.
Yeah. And this is a bike that you could theoretically, you can drop the battery with taking 2 bolts out. You could treat it like the transition relay.
I'm not sure if they recommend that, but
I'm going to go ahead and assume you can if you can take it out. But
I think there's even like another use case. You were talking about adventuring. I've done a little bit of that in my day, but some places are like you're riding a logging road or like you're trying to get to a destination, not so much like trying to experience the ride, but just like trying to get somewhere. And this is super efficient at that. And then also like you could potentially ride it if you were trying to go real far, ride it as an acoustic bike, but knowing that maybe you have a super steep bit of like 1,000-foot climb to get to some peak, and then you bust on the motor, rip up the steep grade, and you're there, kind of thing.
Yeah,
so
you
there's
kind of
like
plan it out accordingly.
Yeah, there could be some like really like different use cases coming from all downhill backgrounds. In this room, we have this sort of view of what we like to do, and
but to be fair, we all pedal a ton.
We do.
So
yeah.
Like not to be lost on the, advantages of having a trail bike, and especially one like this that you add in the E component, and like you're talking, there's like more avenues opened up because of that. So
it's super versatile.
Yeah. I think that's probably the key takeaway.
Yeah, I guess to address the elephant in the room, the one-piece bar and stem didn't bother me as much as I thought it would. It just kind of locks you into like a stack height that I would not run personally.
Yeah, the sweep of it felt good. It didn't feel as abrasive as the giant one-piece bar and stem. Just like the sweep felt more natural, but it did put you in a very forward low position, which is great for climbing, great for technical, slower terrain, and like even just flatter.
It matches the
spinning.
bike.
It matches the bike. But agreed. If I wanted to like be able to have the confidence to hit some bigger features that I know the bike is capable of, it needs that shorter stem with not even a shorter stem, just the higher bars and something with like a bit of roll, because it has a lot of these one piece bar stems have like a bit of upsweep and like just kind of a funky, they're meant to be in a seated position.
Yeah, and I think if you're going to go as far as to do a whole one piece bar stem combo with how much integration there is for like e-bike specific bars, make the cables disappear at least. Like find a way to do that. I know people hate headset routed cables, but I have no problem with headset routed wires.